Okay, let's talk about a disease that has killed more people than any other in history. I'm not kidding. A disease that, right now, infects a quarter of the entire world's population. And no, this isn't some historical plague we've already conquered. This is tuberculosis, and we really need to understand why it's still one of our most formidable threats. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. This is the core truth of tuberculosis. It isn't just another illness. It's been humanity's most persistent microbial enemy. Think about every war, every pandemic you've ever read about. TB has quietly outlasted and, well, outkilled nearly all of them. And this is not ancient history. 1/4 of the world's population, that's 2 billion people, are carrying the bacteria that causes TB right now, as we speak. It's this vast, silent reservoir for the disease, just waiting for a chance to activate. And for a lot of people, it's not dormant at all. In 2022 alone, tuberculosis claimed 1.3 million lives. To put that in perspective, that's more than HIV killed in the same year. It just goes to show you that despite all our incredible medical advances, TB is still a top infectious killer. So what's its secret? How has this one disease managed to stick around for so long? Well, to understand its persistence, we have to meet the microbe behind the plague itself. So, meet Mycobacterium tuberculosis. It was discovered way back in 1882 by Robert Koch. And it has this one key characteristic. It grows incredibly slowly. You see, unlike a fast-acting virus, it's a patient, methodical invader. And that slowness, that's its superpower. It allows it to hide from our immune system and makes it unbelievably difficult to kill with antibiotics, which usually target cells that are replicating really fast. To really get why TB is so hard to fight, we've got to look at its strategy once it gets inside the human body. It is a master of stealth and survival. It all starts with a single breath. Someone coughs, you inhale the droplets, and the bacteria travel deep into your lungs. Now, your immune system's first responders, these cells called macrophages, they rush in to literally eat the invaders. But here's TB's first trick. It has this waxy coat that acts like armor, allowing it to survive inside the very cells that are meant to destroy it. So, since it can't kill it, the body resorts to plan B, containment. It builds this wall of immune cells around the infection, a tiny little prison called a granuloma, to lock the bacteria away. And the outcome of this initial battle is pretty fascinating. For 9 out of 10 people, that immune system prison holds strong. The bacteria are contained, and the person has what we call latent TB. But for the other 10%, that fortress breaks down, the bacteria escape, and the infection becomes active TB. And this distinction, it's everything. With latent TB, you're not sick and you're not contagious. The bug is just sleeping. But with active TB, the bacteria wake up, they multiply, they cause serious illness, and they turn you into a transmitter. This is why controlling TB isn't just about treating sick people. It's about somehow managing that enormous hidden reservoir of 2 billion people with latent infections. All right, so how do we fight back? This has been a medical arms race for more than a century as we try to develop new tools to find and fight this incredibly cunning pathogen. Our diagnostic journey started way back in 1909 with the classic skin test, a test we, believe it or not, still use today. But look at this timeline. It took over a century for the next major leap, the IgRA blood test. Now sure, we have these incredibly accurate molecular tests, but the real challenge is getting them to the parts of the world that need them the most. And here you can see the constant trade-off we face in public health. The old skin test is cheap, which is great, but it can give you a false positive if you've had the TB vaccine, and it requires 2 separate visits. The newer blood test is faster, it's more specific, but it's also more expensive. It's a perfect example of that difficult balance between cost, access, and accuracy. And if you do get diagnosed, the treatment, well, it's a marathon. A standard course means taking a cocktail of 4 different powerful antibiotics every single day for 6 straight months. That extreme length is absolutely necessary to kill off not just the active bacteria, but also those stubborn, semi-dormant ones hiding out in their cellular prisons. It is a huge commitment for any patient to stick with. But what happens when that 6-month marathon of treatment just doesn't work? This is where the true terror of modern TB lies: drug resistance. First, it can become resistant to our best drugs, creating MDR-TB, or multi-drug resistant TB. From there, it can evolve into XDR-TB, extensively drug resistant, which means it's resistant to our backup options too. At that point, treatment becomes this desperate last-ditch effort with toxic, expensive drugs that might not even work. It's the plague literally evolving faster than our cure. So that brings us to the modern battlefield. The challenges of diagnosis, treatment, and this terrifying drug resistance have all been complicated even further by recent global events. Just look at this. For nearly 3 decades, 27 consecutive years, the United States saw this steady, encouraging decline in TB cases, progress. But after 2020, that progress abruptly reversed. In 2023, cases jumped by 16%. So what happened? Why did decades of progress suddenly get wiped out? Well, the answer, as you might have guessed, was the COVID-19 pandemic. As the entire world focused, understandably, on one respiratory virus, our defenses against another one just crumbled. Resources were diverted, clinics were closed, and diagnoses were missed. What we're seeing now is the consequence, a massive, predictable wave of untreated TB cases that were allowed to just simmer and spread in the shadows. And if we zoom out from the US, we're reminded that, at its very core, TB is a disease of inequity. It thrives in conditions of poverty, in overcrowded housing, and in places where public health systems are weak or fragile. You see, these social and economic factors are just as critical to the spread of TB as the bacterium itself. So we're left with this really big question. Tuberculosis has been evolving alongside humanity for thousands of years, constantly finding new ways to survive our best defenses. The real test now is whether our science, our public health systems, and our global cooperation can finally evolve faster than the plague itself.